Diodorus Siculus wrote about the gods on Atlantis in the time of Christ, and he said that the god of Atlantis was Uranus, and that his oldest daughter was named Basilea, and her nickname was the Great Mother. Another son of Atlantis was Hyperion, who drowned in the Eridanus River. So this story is parallel with the Phaeton story, which is the most famous from Plato, who also drowned in the Eridanus River. And this will be in the next episode that I will do. A bit earlier in the text, he relates the name Basilea to an island above the Celts instead. Diodorus Siculus does. And he says that this island is the only place where amber is produced. So one can surmise that this island is in the Baltic then, because Baltic is the area in the old world where amber is produced. And, interestingly, Basilea here is the same name as the Great Mother of Atlantis. Could then the Great Mother simply be another name for the land itself? The land rearing the peoples? The mother land? Could Basilea be another name for Atlantis? And would that in case here be in the Baltic? The place where amber is produced? This is his theory from a work that you've probably never even heard of, right? This is from a man called Olaf Rudbeck, a Swedish scientist from the 1600s, whose work has been completely forgotten or scrubbed, depending on how you want to look at it. It is a Gothicist work, meaning that he works from the theory that the Goths and the Scythians are one and the same, which got explicitly said in the 500 CE by Jordanus, and that they came from the island called Skansa, an Arctic island, which most scholars today agree on is Scandinavia. And if the Goths and the Scythians are from Scandinavia, then most of the Germanic tribes are from there as well. And the Scythians have arms all the way into Greece. The jump from there to theorizing that the gods came from this area then is not that large, and it's exactly what Rudbeck claims in his work. Two questions that arise when you look at this is, first of all, isn't Atlantis supposed to be an island, right? Scandinavia is a peninsula, mainland, not an island. And isn't it supposed to be sunk? Isn't there supposed to be a flood that has happened here? And the first point, if you look at the ancient sources, they describe quite coherently this area as an island, or as even an island world, right? As only an archipelago, because this area is the most island-filled part of the world, bar none. Second place is Canada, and it is 30 times less than that of Scandinavia. So that description is actually quite true, that this place is filled with islands, which is what Pliny says, and Pomponius Mela describes only the archipelago, and the map then becomes rendered as an island world, the Baltic Sea. There are many other examples, which I've shown in my video called Scandinavian Tartaria, which you can check out if you want to. And the question of the flood then becomes that it has to be allegorical, right? And Rudbeck gives several examples of armies being described just as natural forces. I've covered this topic in my video called Thoughts, and I will cover it even more in a later episode. So today's topic is amber, which is the single best piece of evidence there is in this work, in my humble opinion, because this is the most indexical one, meaning that it points most directly to Scandinavia as a single piece of sign. It's a single best piece of evidence. Indexicality is one mode of referencing a sign in semiotics. So there are three ways of referencing: iconic, symbolic, and indexical. And we are concerned with the indexical, which is referring by way of physicality or causality. So for instance, if you see smoke, you know that there's fire somewhere, right? If you say footprint, you know that there's a creature there. And many of these indexical signs still need some collateral knowledge, as it's called, meaning knowledge, pre-knowledge to interpret the sign, even though it is physically or causally linked. For instance, if you see footprint, you have to know what a shoe looks like and that they belong to humans to know that it's a sign of a human, that it's an index of a human. And precisely the same way, amber in the mythical sources quite directly point to Scandinavia, because geographically we are only in the old world in the classical sources. And there, amber is almost exclusively produced in the Baltic, so it is geographically true, and it is also true historically, which is very important, right? Because of the way Atlantis fits the Scandinavian area geographically, historically, right? Not geographically, but historically. It's the same here with amber. Even historically it fits, because all of the classical sources which name amber place it in the Baltic. And they are Diodorus Siculus, which we just mentioned with Basilea being Atlantis, and Pliny. He mentions 3 islands, and Tacitus and Herodotus. These are all placed in the Baltic, and amber is produced here, and they are all islands. That's a very important point. Pliny describes amber the most extensively, and he also mentions some hearsay about amber, where it is. It is quite clear that these hearsay mostly come from the north. So for instance, in Africa he says that there are meleagrides, hesperides, and amber. So there you can surmise that this story came from the north. And in India there is the river Hypobaros, with a woody mountain with amber again. So Hypobaros is very close to Hyperborean, right? So here you can surmise the same thing. These are Indo-Europeans which travel to India. And the name that Rudbeck gives amber as indigenous is gliss. So it means the same thing as in English, glistening or glittering. Because Pliny and Tacitus say that the Germans call amber glacum or glesum. And we will show in a future episode, again, that the Germans come from Scandinavia according to the sources, and even according to some modern sources as well. Glis in Swedish, even in modern lexicons, means glistering or glittering. And glasisvellir in Norse mythology means glittering fields. And in there is Odainsåker, which is a place where you live forever. And the transliteration of glasisvellir is, according to Rudbeck, the Elysian fields. Glas became Elise. And it is very similar in that it is a place where you live forever in a temperate climate, right? And interestingly, Tacitus names a people in the Baltic called Elisi. I will show in a future episode how the Elysian plains intertextually is Arctic, meaning that we will compare all of the sources, not just look at one source. When you say that it's eternal light, you look at some of the sources, not all of the sources. When you do that, you can see quite clearly that it also belongs to the place where darkness is, the underworld. And when you connect that to the Elysian plains, it is quite clear that this underworld is both light and darkness, right? So this is an Arctic place, intertextually. And the Riphaen Mountains are also connected to amber. And there are 2 sources which name amber and crystal together. And they are Dionysius Alexandrino. And then there is Tacitus, who connected to Glaciaria, which is in the Baltic. Olaf Rudbeck, who made this work, he mentions a 3rd source, Prisian Caesarensis, which connects them to the Riphaen Mountains. But this is a mistake, even according to Rudbeck's own standards, because this is a copy of Dionysius Alexandrino, who connected to the Riphaen Mountains. It's a direct copy, so this is not an independent source. And the crystal is, according to Pliny, ice. But if you want to interpret it as literal quartz instead, there are actually quartz in the north here as well, even though they are not as clear or large as those of the Mediterranean kind. Rudbeck, he mentions some of his colleagues that has found them, and I think it is in my part 3. I will put it up on screen here. Modern findings of crystal as well, of quartz. Most scholars place the Riphaean Mountains, if it exists at all in near the Meotic, right? Around Russia, the Russian region, or even the Ural Mountains, right? We've shown two sources which place them along the Finno-Russian border instead, Adolf Bremen and Albert Krantz. And to understand how this would be the edge of the known world, which consequently made some of the old historians believe that the Hyperboreans were in the North Pole, because they imagined the Riphaean Mountains to be on the literal edge of the world. To understand how it would be instead of the Finno-Russian border, you have to understand Ptolemy's map and the interpretation of it that we have done. So I covered this map in my first 3 presentations. I will just do a very short synopsis here. It is the most influential map of the ancient times, right? Scholars after him copied his knowledge and his placing of peoples. And he eastwardly exaggerated the map, so that Rudbeck theorizes that these peoples that are followed to the east too much as well, they should be moved to the west to both correct the geography and also the peoples. And that this exaggeration mirrors the Gothicist history of the Western Scythians moving east, thereby the history moving east, whereby the geography also got moved there as well. And then the Scythian Isodones should be moved to the west as well, and they then are placed in Estonia, becoming Estonian Isodones. Isodones, Estonians being the same then. With that knowledge, let's look at Herodotus, who quotes Aristeas, that beyond the Isodones are the Arimaspians, the Gold-Gunner Griffins, and then the Hyperboreans, and that the lands beyond the Isodones are unconfirmed. There are no eyewitnesses, and the stories come from the Isodones themselves. And this same relationship of peoples can be seen in Pausanias' description of Greece as well. So they had a connection, direct connection to the Isodones, and then the Isodones talk to the Hyperboreans and so forth. So here you can see that the edge of the known world was Estonia, and then the blocked off world began with Finland, where the Arimaspians were. And I will cover them in a future episode as well. Rudbeck theorizes that they are in Finland. So here we are in Finland, and then we come to the Hyperboreans, which are in the north of Scandinavia, on the cap of the north. And the indigenous name, which Rudbeck gives the Riphaean Mountains, the Rifil or Rifel. This comes from the Nordic sagas of Edda, in chapter 2, Gylfe's journey to Asgard. This is quite duplicitous, actually, in my opinion. In the English version, it says that Gylfe answered that his name was Ganglere, and that he had come a long way. But it's translated from the Icelandic Rifils Stigum. I'm not saying it's duplicitous consciously, but it's not represented. You will miss it if you don't look for it, right? This Rifil Stigum, they didn't know what to make of it probably, so they just made it a long way instead. But Rifil Stigum is, in Rudbeck's opinion, this area between Finland and Russia. And you can actually see it in Cloverius Geographia. Here, the Rifel. This is, in Rudbeck's opinion, the Rifil Trail in the Eddas. And if you want to look more at this, I've covered this more extensively in my part 3 of my Atlantis in Scandinavia series. This is all for now, and in the next episode I will cover the Phaeton story. I said in Diodorus Siculus that Hyperion was drowned in the Eridanus River, right? But the famous story is that of Phaeton drowning in the Eridanus River. And these are both sun stories of dying into the water. And they are mythologies of the winter coming, which we will show in the next part. Thank you for this time, and I will see you soon.